Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. I am as Jim said, I'm probably the best pedigreed and least convincing American here in the room today. I do have my passport in my pocket in case anyone wants proof. So I'm really pleased to be here today to talk about two things, and then I hope to have the chance to answer and chat through some questions. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the value of the arts, and I'm going to make an unfashionable argument today. I'm going to make an argument about the power of the arts for us as human beings, about why the arts truly matter. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Giving Tuesday, and Giving Tuesday is a project we've been working on, which has really helped us learn a lot about how the world is changing, how philanthropy is changing, and I think also how the arts need to change themselves. But let me start by just saying something about Hartford, which is a new experience for me. This is my first time here. I've spent my life, really, my career certainly, focused on thinking about how we can encourage the arts in society in various different ways. And yesterday, as was mentioned, I had the chance to meet some of the arts practitioners here in Hartford. And I just wanted to tell you the stories that I heard last night from those individuals, because I've traveled to a lot of places around the world to talk about the arts, but the stories I heard last night I thought were really remarkable. We heard from Will at Real Artways. He's using the arts to strengthen the communities here in Hartford at a time when the world is so much retreating into its corners, right? The world is so much separating. He's using the arts every single day to try and bring people together in life. I met Judy Dwarren, who's here today. Judy's commitment is an extraordinary one, and she's using the arts to remember the people that everyone else has forgotten. She's using the arts to rehumanize those people who have been left behind. I met Catherine from the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center, who of course is doing work that isn't just driving tourism here, but it's also helping us remember. It's helping us look back to look forward. It's taking a great tradition and reinventing it for a new generation. And I met Stephen from the Heartbeat Ensemble, a theatre director here. Not only is he telling stories that aren't told in society, but he's also the first theatre director I've ever met who also has a legislative agenda, which is a very impressive thing. And he has a series of proposals about not how his organization can be helped or he can benefit personally, but he has a series of proposals about how we could strengthen the whole cultural community and creative community of Connecticut. Those were 4 stories out of the 150 stories represented by the organizations part of the council. And I just wanted to say at the start of this, for those who are a part of this community, and especially for those in the room who are supporting this community, this is something special. You do not see this all over the world. You have something really unique and special here in Hartford, and of the things which make these things happen, all these people are able to invest in the community here because you invest in them. And those were just 4 of the 150 stories that could be told, and I just wanted to say at the start what a privilege it is to spend time amongst such exceptional colleagues. With that said, let me start with my unfashionable argument about the arts. So we have talked a lot in recent years about the instrumental value of the arts. So we talk a lot about how if we use the arts in the right way, then maybe one day our children will be better at maths, right? So if we learn that. We've talked about how if we use the arts in some ways, then maybe it will help return some things to employees. And there is good data and there is good research which back up all of these claims. But I'm going to talk about something else this morning, which is the true value of the arts, what they are, why they matter, and try and make an argument about something we've often forgot in the arts world, which is these are things which are fundamental to who we are as human beings. So at the 92nd Street Y, perhaps the most extraordinary thing I ever heard from an artistic perspective was a performance of the Well-Tempered Clavier by the great pianist Andras Schiff. If you don't know the work, your task today is go and listen to it. It is one of the great pieces of piano music in the repertoire. And he played it exceptionally. He played it without any notes. He played it without touching the pedals over 2 nights, and it was a truly virtuoso performance of one of the most important works of music ever written. Over 2 nights, he completed this piece, and when he stopped at the end of this truly virtuoso performance, he had a huge round of applause. He came back on stage. He started an encore. And as an encore, he began the whole piece all over again. He played the very first prelude, which he had begun 2 nights previously. And this was 2 or 3 days, must have been 3 days after Hurricane Sandy in New York. And we had some good conversations about whether we should actually be having an event at all. But we knew the audience wanted to come, and we also knew that New York, if it has one thing, it has some resolve. So we knew that the show should go on. And when I was sitting there in the audience, hearing him after this epic performance start all over again, he had a little smile on his face and he started all over again. I was sitting in my chair thinking, what an extraordinary statement about resilience. What an extraordinary statement that even after epic things, we simply pick up and we start all over again. And that's what I thought when he started that piece of music. But I don't know what the person sitting 3 rows in front of me thought, right? Maybe they thought about their wife and kids. Maybe it made them think about their wedding. Maybe it made them think about what they really wanted in life. Maybe it made them think about some great challenges. Maybe that piece of music made them feel a bit calmer or a bit happier or a bit more inspired or a bit more spiritual. For every single person in the concert hall that night, there were 1,000 people there, for every single person, each one of them was moved by that piece of music in a very different but profoundly human way. And it reminds us that the arts, the impact of the arts is not uniform. It's not the same for all of us. But the impact of the arts is universal. It is something that for people everywhere, it moves souls and it touches people's hearts. Now, that piece of music has been played for over 300 years, or almost 300 years, around the world. That was just one performance on one night, and it had an impact on 1,000 people. But it's been played very badly by, in small rooms, by small children plonking away at the start of it. It's been played extraordinarily well in the most beautiful concert halls in the whole world. But for over almost 300 years, which is almost as old as Jim is, for almost 300 years, that piece of music has been played countless times, and every time it has really grabbed to people and made them consider a slight bit more what it means to be human. And what is true of that piece of music is true of the great songs, it is true of the great paintings, it is true of the great dances. What the arts do at their very best is actually get us all to take that moment and reconsider what it means to be human beings. As the great English writer Stephen Fry once said, without the arts, we are simply monkeys with credit cards. So at the 92nd Street Y, we're a community centre serving over 300,000 people a year. And we do everything in the arts, from ceramics to painting to dance to poetry to spoken word. There's arts in every part of the building. And we serve a kind of interesting demographic in some ways. We have huge amounts of people when they are children engaged in the arts. We have huge enthusiasm as children and young people. And then we have a bit of a gap in the middle years when people go and have jobs and have families. And then the moment people retire, they come straight back to the 92nd Street Y. And we have huge numbers of retirees who are coming there to the Y to engage in the arts. We have kings and queens of Wall Street. We have titans of industry, all of whom after their careers come back to the arts. And it always makes me think every day at the Y, as we think about the kind of human experience, you have this huge enthusiasm for the arts when we are children. Everyone here as a child enjoyed the arts, right? We have huge enthusiasm again once we've retired. So in a way, we can think about our careers as simply distractions from our more important work as artists. And I think that's a really, really important idea. Before we were bankers, before we were lawyers, before we were politicians, we were artists. Being artists is the most human thing of all. If you look back to some of the earliest evidence of mankind, it is art. You look on the walls of the caves in Lascaux in France, and you won't see P&L, right? You won't see people with ledgers. There are no spreadsheets, right? There are pictures of artistic things. There are cats, there are bisons, there are horses. And on one corner of these amazing cave paintings in Lascaux in France, there is a place where someone has put their hand against the wall like this and chewed up some berries and spat. And then next to it, someone else has come along and put their hand and chewed up some berries and spat. And through this whole wall, there are all these different silhouettes of all these different hands and all these different people. And it reminds us that what the arts are about is the two most fundamental things we do as human beings. We create and we share. We create something and then we share it with others. And all the stories of all the arts organizations in the room today are all about people who create things and then share them with the societies and the communities here in Hartford. And I think it's very easy to forget just how important that is to all of us as human beings. We get into lots of conversations about what are the values of the arts, but in my mind there's actually no question of the value of the arts. We all know the value of the arts. What's challenging is the price. Where we get into trouble with the arts is actually trying to work out how much money we should spend on it. But just in the way that you can't measure a marriage by the price of the wedding, you can't measure the arts by the price of a concert. We really have to think carefully about how we can reimagine the value of the arts in society today. So I actually asked one of my colleagues at the Y, I told them I was speaking here, and I said to her, what shall I say about the arts? And she does all of our educational outreach work, so she works with kids in the public school systems throughout New York. And I said to her, what should I talk about today? And she said, you should talk about the project we did with Terezin, around the idea of Terezin. Now, for those who don't know, Terezin was a concentration camp outside of Prague. And she, our educational outreach director, actually put together a whole series of events which showcased some of the art, the poetry, and the music created both by and for the children who were in that concentration camp. When she talked about why she thought this was important, she said this about this project. She said, it was through the arts that these children will be able to express their humanity at a time that the world silenced their voices. And it was the artistry that they created that has lived on for eternity to teach us all about our own humanity, resilience, and hope. Without the arts, she said, the voices of our societies die. We think a lot about the arts, and we enjoy the arts a lot, but sometimes we should remember too, they are the most profound statement of what it means to be human beings. They are the profound statement about when we are at our best at our societies. They are also the way we remember those moments when we are at our very, very worst. Now, here in Hartford, I've had a great chance to meet some of the people involved in the arts world, but I want to say a couple of things as an out-of-towner about why I think the work of the Arts Council is so important. The first is to say something about unrestricted funding. There are no greater words in this universe than unrestricted funding. But let me tell you why unrestricted funding isn't just an argument about arts organizations wanting blank checks. Unrestricted funding is so important because people need to explore. If there is one thing the arts is driven by, and indeed it's the same thing which science is driven by, it is a sense of discovery. People need to be supported to try and find out what is new. And just as in the science world, the greatest moments in science have been those moments of discovery which began by people empowering people simply to experiment. The same is true of the arts. The internet came about just like that. Some of the greatest works of art have come about just like that. So unrestricted funding matters so much because it allows people to be free. But I'll say something else too, as a practitioner. We endanger sometimes the arts because we try to get them to do too many things. We try and get the arts to solve all of society's problems one by one. And sometimes, too, we try and get them to solve the problems that are most important to funders but least important to society. Right? So one of the things about unrestricted funding which is so important is it both empowers discovery, but it also lets people follow their passions. And I always believe the way you will get the best from the arts is if you invest in people's passions. So I think that's a really, really important idea. But I also think we should recognize, too, the impact the arts does have here in Hartford and on the community. I read a survey which was sent to me before this event, which I really thought had some pretty impressive numbers, which talked about the prosperity of the arts here and that it generates $230 million in economic activity, it supports 7,000 jobs, it delivers $21 million in taxes, it generates an additional $82 million in event-related spending for events. These are some impressive numbers around what the arts is generating in economic terms. But if you want to make a real argument for why the arts matter here in Hartford, or indeed anywhere else, I think it's simple. Just imagine if they weren't here. Right? Imagine a Hartford where in every place you know one of the arts institutions, in every place you used to see creativity, in every place you used to see the organizations and societies coming together. Imagine the Hartford where in every place you used to see that there was the emptiness. There was simply nothing there. Imagine those options weren't available. I was hearing earlier that now every single night there is something important to do in Hartford, so much so you can't do everything. Imagine there was nothing. Imagine what that would mean for you as parents, for your friends, for your employees, for your lives, for your retirements, for your kids. The arts are the things that, if we get it right, make our societies vital. They're the things that invest in ourselves. They're the way that once in a while we manage to reach out of ourselves, break those borders of self-interest, and try and understand what it is like to be something else. That is what healthy societies are made of. They are made of the things created by the arts. So I couldn't be more encouraging and enthusiastic for those people in the room who support the arts to remember the thing you are supporting is not just a nice to have. The thing you are supporting is a must have, and it really desperately needs the support of people like you. Because one of the great challenges of the arts is, since its very beginning, it has needed great patrons. The Renaissance was only possible because there were well-intentioned public leaders who were prepared to step forward and say, there is a bigger idea here and I must invest in it. The things which most neatly fit on spreadsheets are not necessarily the things which are most valuable to society. So for everyone here who is part of an organization which can get behind the arts, let me encourage you anew to support the arts, not just for the amazing things they will do for your business, but let me encourage you for the amazing things the arts will do for your society and the amazing things the arts will do for humanity. Thank you. So if that was a little bit of a theory, I'm going to talk now about a bit of practice about Giving Tuesday. So Giving Tuesday is a project we've been involved in and has been popular over the last couple of years, which was really trying to think a bit differently about some trends in the nonprofit world. And I thought I would just share a couple of the lessons we've had from Giving Tuesday in the hope that they might be interesting to you as you think about building strength in the nonprofit sector and especially the cultural world here in Hartford. So Giving Tuesday began just over 2 years ago, with a fairly simple idea, which is, you know about Black Friday, you know about Cyber Monday. What about Giving Tuesday? If you have 2 days that are dedicated to consumption, what about a day dedicated to community? If you have 2 days that are good for the economy, what about adding a day that was good for the soul? So that was the simple idea behind Giving Tuesday, and it grew more quickly and more widely than we had expected. So as of this last year, we had 27,000 partners in all 50 states here in the US, and in fact around the world. And what we began to see with Giving Tuesdays was a really interesting example of the cultural world and the nonprofit world thinking differently about a couple of key topics. We saw a lot of innovation in Giving Tuesday, we saw a lot of technology in Giving Tuesday, and we saw a lot of people renegotiating the way that they engage with their communities. And I wanted to give you a couple of examples of some of the projects we saw last year, which I think were useful in terms of learnings. So the University of Michigan, who's had some challenging times as a state in recent years, they ran a Giving Tuesday campaign where they changed Giving Tuesday into Giving Blue Day. And blue is, I think, something to do with their university. Do we have any University of Michigan people here? There we are. Tremendous. So Giving Blue Day, they took Giving Tuesday, turned it into Giving Blue Day. Of course, 10 years ago, if you had launched a project and someone took it and changed it, you'd sue them, right? But Giving Tuesday, of course, is trying to encourage ownership. It's trying to encourage people to make it their own. And so for Giving Blue Day, they said, we're going to encourage our whole community, from the president to their alumni to their students, to become the fundraisers of our organization and help get people behind the important work that they do. They set a very ambitious goal of $1 million to raise. They ended up raising $3.4 million on the day, which was an extraordinary number, but there's a more important story behind what they raised. The reason they were able to do that, I think, was because they really thought very differently about ownership. They weren't saying fundraising is about our development department who have to ask everybody to get money. What they did was they mobilized their whole community. They actually had a movement of people on that day who got behind the University of Michigan. And I think one of the big lessons from Giving Tuesday is this idea that all of us as organizations need to shift from a point of view where we think about people as donors and get into a mindset where we are trying to think about people as owners. And what I mean by that is, how do they own your cause? How do we get people thinking about getting behind the things that we care about? You know, the most compelling reason in the whole world for someone to give money is because their friend asks them. There is nothing more successful in fundraising than a friend asking a friend. All Facebook is a series of groups of friends. That's all it does, right? That's its function. And thinking about how we can shift the ownership of our organizations couldn't be a more important idea. So I think that's a big theme from Giving Tuesday and an important theme for our sector. The second story from Giving Tuesday was an organization called Phoenix House, who help people who are in recovery. And for Giving Tuesday, they didn't do any fundraising at all. Instead, they said, well in advance of Giving Tuesday, they said to people, would you write a letter of support to someone who is in recovery right now? Now, of course, people who are suffering with addiction, and especially in recovery, often are estranged from their families. There's a lot of loneliness. So they said for Giving Tuesday, just write letters of support to people in need. And then on Giving Tuesday, they issued all these letters to people all over the city in New York to help support them and show them a moment of solidarity. Amazing idea that you can create that kind of civic moment, that kind of reaching out, because people are thinking differently at a time that they were thinking all about what they could buy. You're pushing people slightly to think a bit more about how they can give back. And then the Nightingale School in New York created a curriculum, a giving curriculum for Giving Tuesday. They said for Giving Tuesday, we're not going to raise any money for ourselves. We're not going to do any volunteering. We're going to do what we're good at, which is teaching, and we're going to create a free curriculum to help encourage philanthropy in schools across the country. So they put their educational experts together for a summer, and they released a free curriculum which is now being used all over the country, which actually helps a new generation of kids learn how to be philanthropists in their own right. These were really interesting stories from Giving Tuesday, which we began to see happening, didn't really expect any of them. These weren't planned by us. These kind of came about organically. But I think they started to tell us some important ideas that we should all be thinking about as a community. One of them is around how we master social media. So it is an extraordinary thing to think. One of the statistics I was most surprised by with Giving Tuesday last year was that 17% of all donations made were by cell phones. Right? I'm not going to ask people to put their hands up if they've got a good mobile fundraising strategy in this room, but if I was to ask that, my hand would not be raised. So we are all struggling with this fact that social media is happening very, very quickly, and one thing I would say to all of us is we have to make sure we are embracing and mastering new technology. For all organizations, whether you are in politics or in the arts or in anywhere else, one of the big fundamental challenges we should be thinking about is our organization changing as much as the world is? Very, very hard to do, but we have not made any bets on technology that have not paid off in a significant way. At the very worst, we've certainly learned a lot. And then finally, I think the thing that we've learned from Giving Tuesday, which has been really important, and I think is such a good reminder of why the work of the Arts Council matters so much, is it's so important we tell shared stories. There are so many people doing amazing things in this country, and our work is so often so fragmented. We're all chasing the same dollars. We're all chasing the same people. For all the good work that we do, there is often not a real sense of collaboration amongst us as non-profits or as organizations. But we increasingly are so much stronger if we can come together in powerful ways. Some of the most powerful Giving Tuesday campaigns were not campaigns where individual organizations went against each other, but when they came together. In the city of Baltimore, the entire city came together in Baltimore to get behind a campaign they called Be More Gives More. So they took Giving Tuesday and turned it into Be More Gives More. And everyone from the local pizza place through to the large banks there came together to raise funds for nonprofits in Baltimore. And in one day, they raised $6 million. Now, they did that because they came together, not divided. And one of the reasons I think the work of the Arts Council here is just so important is it helps create a shared narrative. It helps all of us come together and make one collective argument about the impact of the arts and culture and creativity. And as we move forward in a world which is so uncertain, is so divided, the arts matter more than ever. And by bringing things together and telling one story, I think we can have such an extraordinary impact. Thank you so much. Yeah. So, may I just say one thing? I just wanted to say thank you to the Kathy in particular for her support. She's been a good friend for a long time, and of course to the Governor for his work here on behalf of the state, which is such an extraordinary example of so many of the things which I have learned to love about this country. So thank you, Governor, thank you, Kathy, and thank you everyone for the chance to be here today.